Welcome if you're just joining us from terrestrial. We've had a lot of folks who have said that they have found a home and looking for a little connection with the New York theme. So if you're an old Mike and a Mad Dog fan or a Mike fan, good to have you with us as we chat. All right, let's do a couple things here. Is anybody into these bowls? I mean, these college bowls, I have not watched a second of them yet. I'm proud of that. I'm not watching Troy, North Texas in the New Orleans Bowl. I'm not sitting here watching even Boise and Oregon in the Las Vegas Bowl. Last night, Florida Atlantic 50-3 over Akron in the Boca Raton Bowl. I mean, I understand that they think these are moneymakers, that ESPN puts all these games on, and most of the games are on ESPN. There's a couple that are on Fox, a couple that are on CBS, Sun Bowl. There's a couple of games on ABC on New Year's Day. I get that. But overall, and I know they get decent ratings. People bet the games. But why would anybody sit there on a Tuesday night and watch Florida Atlantic and Akron? Or tonight, the Gasparilla Bowl, Temple and FIU. I mean, Temple is a 7-point favorite. Or I go even one step further, the Dollar General Bowl on December 23rd, Toledo against Appy State. Or how about Arizona, Purdue in the Foster Farms Bowl? You all revved up with that? Navy, Virginia in the Military Bowl? How about the Alamo Bowl with TCU and Stanford? I mean, tell me a bowl game, Northwestern Kentucky in Music City. Now, again, that's a Friday afternoon at 4:30. Tori's going to call me at 4. Chris, do me a favor, get the bet in for me, so he's going to want to take Kentucky. But overall, you get the idea. Outside of, the Auburn UCF game, the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day at 12:30, I have a little interest in because I want to see how UCF plays against the SEC team, UCF team that, scored 1 million points every game. Frost is going to coach. They're a 9.5-point underdog. The Cinderella against the big SEC, big bad SEC. I got a little interest in that game. I'll be the first to admit. And obviously I'll have a little interest in the Cotton Bowl. I wonder how many of these big players are going to play. But the Ohio State USC game, that's a big game. Donald, you got to figure a lot of these players don't want to play who are going to enter the draft because they don't want to get hurt. We saw that happen some last year with Fournette, McCaffrey. But, that game I have a little interest in, Ohio State and USC. But, I don't know, Wisconsin and Miami, I have no interest in. LSU, Notre Dame, I know that Citrus Bowl, 1 o'clock, not much going on until we get to the Rose Bowl, Georgia, Oklahoma. Not going to have a ton of time to get into there. Michigan, South Carolina, I mean, there's 2 bowls. Maybe I can find a third that I have a little interest in prior to January 1st, but I'm not so sure. And there's too many of these bowls that nobody cares about as far as football is concerned, except the actual universities that are involved. And ESPN cares. They're looking for some programming. They don't have any football right now. They don't have any college football on Saturdays. There's only so many college basketball games they can show you with their 150,000 people watching it. So from that standpoint, they figure they put a football game on there with a line, the Bahamas Bowl. There you have it. And, the Eddie Ericksons of the world put some shekels on it, and they get some people watching. So that is one of the reasons why there are so many bowls. But it's tough to watch, let's be honest, with all the bowls. That's the first thing I wanted to get to today. Second thing I wanted to get to here in this 4 o'clock spot is it's a little weird about the Patriots with this Alex Guerrero. If you read the Sports Illustrated story that came out last year after the Pats beat Atlanta, they spent a lot of time, remember, SI after those kind of games, it's 4 days later, they look for a theme when they write a game story. They are not writing a game story because, who wants to read an Atlanta, New England game story 4 days after the game was played? You read that the next day, you listen to the talk shows, and then by Tuesday or Wednesday, you're on to some other things. So SI's got to look at it the same way. And so SI last year essentially did a story about Brady's workout regimen and what Brady does physically to keep himself, it's a little unorthodox, but to keep himself raring to go at 40 to be so effective and so good. And they spent a lot of time, I believe it was with Guerrero, the trainer, and they spent a lot of time with him. And, what he does, I guess some of it's unconventional, what he does to keep Brady on top form physically and mentally and everything else to get him ready for a long 16-game season. And that was the theme of the SI story. And I came away from that saying, boy, look at this. What a story. Look at Brady. He cares so much, blah, blah, blah. I was impressed by that. So I was shocked today when the Patriots, for whatever the reason, decided to cut cord with Guerrero, essentially throw him out of the building in Foxborough, take away his credential, and, essentially, tell Brady it's going to be our training staff or nothing. And, basically put him in a tricky spot where he's got his trainer there who he pays plenty of money to, who he's worked with for a long period of time, and then, who no longer is going to be allowed anywhere near the facility to work with Brady. I'm very surprised. I don't know anything about the whole situation. Maybe something's going on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. I don't understand that. But Brady did have a statement today, basically indicating that he wasn't pleased. But I'm a little surprised the Patriots would do this, with their best quarterback. I'm a little surprised. Bite the bullet. This is not steroids with the Giants letting everybody walk into the Giant clubhouse with Bonds. And that was a joke. Everybody who was supplying Bonds the cream had a credential to walk into AT&T Park. This is not the same here with Guerrero. So I'm a little surprised that they cut ties with him. And, why would you do that this late in the year with Brady? I would think, even if you didn't like him, you put up with it because Brady is that good and he believes in the guy that much. And you'd figure that what's good for Brady is good for the team. And for whatever the reason, I don't know. I'd have to get to the bottom of that. And, you're probably not going to get to the bottom of it. The Patriots won't discuss it. Brady's not going to discuss it. He's going to be a good team man. He's going to let this ride, and he might be stewing underneath, but he's not going to get involved here on a day-in, day-out basis. I am a little surprised that the Patriots have decided to cut corners with Guerrero. That does surprise me. That's the second thing. The third thing, it's funny. Two things I want to say here. I have been following the Sacramento Kings because Torrey wanted to play the Kings as an over for the year to find a team that, on those cold winter nights when Indiana's not playing, sitting up there in Mount Kisco, he can watch and root for and something different to get the over. So that's what Torrey did. So I made the play. So I've been watching with him, something to do. And their number is 27.5. Over under for the season. And you figure in the Western Conference, 27.5, that's a tricky number. Tough division, you would think, but as it turns out, it hasn't been. But tough division, very hard conference, and that hasn't worked out either because the Midwest division's been terrible. Leonard hasn't played for San Antonio, so you figured Memphis would be a little better. But you figured going into the year, 27.5 for a team like Sacramento in that conference would be a disaster. If you're going to take that kind of team, take him in the East when there's a lot of bad teams. Don't take Sacramento. But anyway, Torrey wanted to take Sacramento. So I've been watching Sacramento. And as you guys well know, my good buddy, who I've kind of lost, I've been in and out of touch with, but the guy that I grew up with, literally, is Grant Napier. And Grant is the play-by-play voice for about 30 years. I think it's 29, but whatever it is, 29, 30 years. He is the play-by-play voice of the Kings. And he's been there since they played in Norco Arena, Rodney McQuaid. 29 years, do the math. That's 17, probably since 87, 88. That's a long time. Long time. And Grant and I grew up. He grew up on Meadowbrook Road, and I grew up on Split Rock Road. You can walk house to house. And Grant and I grew up together. And Grant, born in 59, I was born in 59. And Grant still is, a huge, huge New York sports fan. Huge. And I can remember days, this is back in the mid-60s, 66, 67, when Grant would ride his bicycle over to 11 Harmony Court, and we would play touch football in the vacant lot on Harmony Court. And Grant was a great punter. He loved to punt. Oh, he loved to kick. Loved it. I went to 4-H camp with Grant. I mean, I did everything with him. I went to Spain one year with my parents in 76. Grant was there with his mother. I mean, you name it. Everything. Well, he claims, I don't remember it for some reason, he claims we saw O.J. rushed for 2,000 yards at Shea Stadium in a snowstorm against the Jets when he was a Bill. I remember he took me to many a Giant game because he was a season ticket holder with the Giants. His father was a huge Giant fan going back to the mid-'50s, and Grant used to take me to the Giants. I remember one day we went to a Giant-Eagle game, and this game was, I'm going to give you the exact date, it was 62-10. The Giants won the game. They had a huge game against the Eagles. I'm going to give you the date, and I remember the game. Marty Glickman, Yankee Stadium, Grant Napier, Christopher Russo. And that game was, to be exact, the date was 62-10. Let me find the day. Was 1972. So I was 12 years old. Okay? So, and I'm sure there were games other than that. Now, I got to look the year that O.J. got the 2,000 yards. I think that was in 73, Buffalo and the Jets. But regardless, go way back with Grant. So Grant does the Kings, and now that I have a little rooting interest with Tori with the Kings, I've been texting Grant during the games. Texting him. When I, happened to be sitting around watching a game, and last night was one of those games. They were playing the Sixers and Noah Bede, so I was in Philadelphia. The Kings have been on the road forever. They played 18 of their first 30 on the road. And so I watched this is a two-pronged story. So I watched the game with him, and last night, Grant, because the Kings came back, they had a good fourth quarter, they won the game, and Grant sounded like the Grant Napier that I sat with at Meadowbrook and Split Rock waiting for the 7th grade bus in 1971. Sounded like the way he broadcast the game with that spirit and enthusiasm. I swear to God, it took me back 45 years. It was, and I texted him about that. Matter of fact, I want to show you this. I'll read it to you. Okay. Now I don't know how Grant does this in the middle of I don't know how he does this in the middle of a game and still do the game right, but he does. He figures it out. He reaches out to me. Don't tell the Kings that, but he reaches out to me. I guess I just did tell the Kings, but let me tell you what. So let me tell you what he said last night. Okay, here we go. This is what I wrote him at 8:45. Sounds like we are back on the corner of Split Rock and Meadowbrook waiting for the bus. Ha ha ha, he says, love it. I said, 27 and a half, Grant, get us there. All right. Then he says with a smile, I'm waiting for Leslie Dewing to show up. Now, Leslie Dewing, I said to myself, that was his old girlfriend. And I said to him, didn't you go out with her with the horses, right? This is in 1970. And she said, just friends. Yes, she had the horses. So I'm having these conversations with Grant when he's doing the game. Anyway, I continue with the game. The Kings come back. They win the game, everything else. Great win. And I've noticed now twice when they've won, I've noticed in the post game that Zach Randolph has given the sideline reporter, who's a former player, I don't know her name. I should have gotten that to be nice. But I've noticed in the sideline reporter after the game, Zach sits there and he gives her a very good interview. I heard him do it when they beat the Bulls about 2 weeks ago. Geez, look at that, Zach Randolph. I thought he was a pain in the ass. I didn't realize that Zach's such a good guy. It seems like a nice kid. At Michigan State, you've heard all these things about Zach Randolph. You just don't know what kind of personality he is. What's her name? KT Christensen. Okay, so she did it yesterday, and from that standpoint, I saw the Chicago game. Yesterday they win, and I see Zach Randolph again after the game. They had just beaten Philly, and Zach gives her a tremendous interview. This has got a chance to be a playoff team. This is a great game. It's a good learning experience for our young kids. They got a young team. They got all those draft picks. He goes on and on and on. She asks him 4 or 5 questions. He doesn't look to get out of there, as a lot of these players do when they post-game stuff. As good an interview as I couldn't believe it, how nice he was. So I text Grant. I say, Grant, Zach Randolph, is this guy is as good as he gets? I don't get this. He said, Chris, the greatest guy I've seen in the NBA forever, and a tremendous teammate. How about that? So I have now reconnected with the great Grant. Go back to 1966, Grant punting the ball at the lot on Harmony Court when he played touch football. Think about that. That's when Lombardi was coaching the Packers against the Browns. Think about that for a minute. And then I get a little lesson in Zach Randolph. You always thought that Zach's got that persona. You never know. He kind of always frowning. Geez, I don't know if Zach's one of the nicest guys. And then you find out when he's playing the Kings, and because Story bet him, you find out, my God, what a sweetheart. So that is my new deal. I'm going to give this to Grant. I'm going to give this to Eddie. Before the year is up, I put a little bounty on it, $100. Before the year is up, I want and it's got to be on a regular line, not a cell phone. I want a 20-minute interview with an engaged Zach Randolph. That's the deal. If we get that 20-minute engaged interview for Zach Randolph, Grant will get a dinner and Eddie will get a $50 bill. We'll continue here on Mad Dog Unleashed.